things first, you already win. You already him, you don't gotta pretend. Fuck them, you already king. You stay real, you confident in your skin. It's all now, sit in the power that you already in. This the story of a master from a true Bedouin, far away from home than few ever been. First round pick, league of the smooth gentleman. The game rigged like 50 said it's a cruel sentiment. I'm from the era when lyrics and bars is over everything. 5-star veteran. You couldn't walk in my fucking shoes or carry them. Excuse my borderline is very thin. Been married to the game like ever since maybe 2010. I realized most of y'all not serious. Point blank period. I flex and twist necks like cherry stems. Thought he was buried, but there he is.
What up? We got 2 more months in 2024. This is episode 17, I believe. We keep going on a 30 for 30. It's definitely episode 101. I know that. We did episode 100 yesterday with my wife, Sheba. It was cool. It was awesome. It's good to be back on.
Your heart pounding.
Turn this down. To be back on camera with her. That was fun. Oh, something else is playing. Hello? Oh no, that was the thing. Okay, good. Episode 101. It's October 31st. It's Halloween. And I hope everybody's good. Hope everybody's safe. The kids out getting candy and stuff. I remember doing that back as a kid in Brooklyn. First, when we lived in an apartment building, we'd go around and knock on all the apartment buildings up and down the building. Those 6 floors. And then we lived, in a home, in a detached home, or an attached home, frankly, in Brooklyn. And we'd go to different places and buildings, and we go into little shops and stores and get candy. It was a cool thing, yo. I know with the COVID, and I feel like IRL is different these days. I wonder how the kids are. I wonder what it's like to be a 12-year-old today. So I hope the kids get to have this kind of experience, this community building kind of thing, and the trust and the sharing and the getting comfortable with knocking on each other's doors. When we first moved out here, our neighbors brought us like a pie and some wine and little things, little gestures of community. I think those are important. I think those are little subtle things that they're important, particularly, as you've experienced them. If you've never experienced them, if you grow up in a space where everybody's very secluded and separate, and every home is very separate, and people don't speak to each other, then you won't miss such a thing. You won't necessarily have a craving for it or desire. It will be scary if someone actually came and knocked on your door, even with a gift, even with like some advice or some kind of awareness that they're bringing. You're like, wait a second, what the fuck is you knocking on the door for? We knocking on the door. But we need to do that. We need community, man, because I think we always did, and I think we're gonna continue to need community. And when we first moved out here too, they had a salt box on the corner, which was really cool. And I was like, oh, look at this salt box. To me, a salt box is another interesting. It's like if a anthropologist happens on a neighborhood and you see a salt box, it tells you, it implies that there's some community oriented stuff. I didn't even know what the fuck a salt box was when I saw it. She had to explain, and it's like, oh, everybody just has, for the snow, everyone can come here and salt their sidewalk, their driveway, and the public areas too. Why not? Let's do it together. What up, y'all? Applause for that. Again, happy Halloween. I hope everybody's good. Just chilling. Let's take a breath for a second. Let me do a little couple breaths, a little meditation joint. Big deep breath and an exhale. Sometimes we're trying to figure out like what to talk about. This was one of those days where I was like, what am I going to talk about today? We keep going 30 days, 30 episodes, and we've been strong up till now, day 17. I'm like, am I running out of things? I don't think it's possible to run out of things. So no, I didn't. I'm not running out of things, but I keep coming back to like words, real talk. I keep coming back to this thing for me. I know it is something that is a passion of mine. Um, Words and discourse and language and conversation. And it just so happens that to me, from my experience with these things, yeah, I find it to be a very powerful glue that holds everything together. And because it's that, the nature of it, the nature of that glue, um, means that it's really powerful because it's holding everything together. If it's a kind of glue that highlights one thing, it can do that. This glue binds and you know gives us meaning. It gives meaning to things, and it directs our attention. Um, what are the tendencies of the glue? Every culture has different tendencies with their glue, related to like the nature of how the language came about and when. Um, the English language has a particular thing, and the English American language has a particular energy to it. It's not as poetic, let's say, as other older languages can be. Um, that doesn't mean that it's bad. I mean, it just this. You're pointing to how language can be different and are different. And I really think I said it in the last one, and I mean this. I think I'll be proven right eventually. I think that the scientific disciplines understate the importance and the value of language. I think that words and linguistics are meaningful parts of like physics on a level that people don't properly place yet. Because it's very confusing, and it has some very serious implications what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting, and I'm not the first to suggest this. I've found I came to this kind of sort of on my own, a compilation of different experiences and books read and interests of mine. But then I've come to see that there are people talking about this thing, and that's been encouraging, because at first I felt a little crazy. Um, but no, there's definitely stuff that is not. I wouldn't call it mainstream, and I want to. And always, whenever we're talking about this, like I always say about in relation to language and words, like we would, we're gonna give language to this phenomenon. We're gonna try to describe something, but that it is always more complex than this. And the language, what we're pointing to will be a bit off. I can only apply the language that I have and the references that I have. Um, a perfect example is this is when people now recently sort of a new age philosophy slash faith sort of orientation. People are talking about reality as a video game. People are describing our reality as a video game. And there's something powerfully true and resonant about that. And yet you realize that that is an entirely new, that's in the last 20 years that people can even if people got what we're saying and are trying to point towards this complex video game where we have controls and we are engaging with each other with interfaces and all this, the whole idea, that phraseology of life is a video game, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that would have meant nothing. That would have been a useless phrase. It wouldn't have helped anyone understand anything. The video games either, were super rudimentary back then, or they didn't exist, or they were rudimentary. So they weren't. It would be a bad analogy. When we say it, we're talking about like Grand Theft Auto. We're talking about the video games that allow you to have like free range and walk around, have general free range. Even obviously in the games, they don't really have free range, but they give you that illusion. And there's a central mission and then a side mission. There's several side missions, and a game like Grand Theft Auto, lets you customize your character and do all kinds of stuff. And so you see how if someone was trying to, I think that metaphor works. I think that there's truth to that. I think there's something interesting. I don't think we're in a video game. I think that it's an interesting metaphor, but that that metaphor wasn't available to us just 2 decades ago. In my lifetime, that metaphor wasn't available. So if someone was trying to point to something, just so as in the way that we can quickly say video game and everyone kind of gets what we mean and can kind of be empowered by that, by the value of that metaphor. 2 decades ago, someone with the same aims, with the same awareness, same like awareness, scientific, holistic, spiritual awareness, couldn't articulate it in the same way. They would have to be more roundabout. They would have to pick more other things and talk about it differently. I think that that's major key. I think that that's major key, that any argument we make will be, first off, anything that we're trying to describe, whether it's a complex phenomena in the outside world or a complex inner phenomena, a feeling, if I'm trying to describe it, I can only describe it using the words that are available to me, the metaphors that are available to me. And if I'm describing it to an audience, I am attempting, I obviously my goal is to convey some information. I will have to have access to the language that they have. And it'll be important for me to understand the language that they have and the metaphors that are available to them. It's like going to, some other country somewhere, go to Iran and make a joke about like Alf, the American TV show with the alien, and they're like, "What are you talking about? You're and you're like, what?" And then you make the joke. You're like, "What the fuck? This is hilarious. Why aren't you laughing at my joke?" You need to be in tune with your audience, and so I'm pointing to like how I think that language, the development of language, the use of words, the application of labels, the common vernaculars in areas and pockets of, in space and in time are as relevant to like human evolution and understanding the evolution of societies, macro society, but also individuals in those societies are affected by the absence of words. Certain words. It's part of the evolutionary process to be able to identify something and give it words and to have it be accepted for people to understand something as this. They can then build off that idea. They can then divert. People can jump from that to the next thing. People can see the world entirely differently. And that's a wild thing. And I think, like I'm saying, like if you've been watching the channel for a while, I've talked about lots of stuff, right? Identity and God and love and stuff. And one of the things with identity I've tried to touch on, and this is why you'll see I have a crusade against homophobia, in part because the way that I've seen it manifested, and particularly as a black man, even things that seem innocuous and playful and fun, like frequently saying no homo, or saying pause every time someone says something gay, or even like something seemingly gay, or something not gay at all, like eating a banana, but that the banana looks like a phallic penis. And so guys have to say no homo when they eat a banana, or say pause. I think that actually has an evolutionary repercussion. There is something identity oriented, and in terms of the capacity to identify oneself, this and other things that we do, other ways that we reinforce ourselves and reinforce each other, affect us beyond just that conversation that we're having. Words are not just flipping away. I did an episode where I talked about the words, just for an hour and a half, I think, and I'm only scratching the surface, and I'm going to try to scratch it a little bit here again, to constantly reinforce yourself. I've been in rooms, for years with people who I consider friends, who are good people, to constantly reinforce yourself against the idea of um like no homo, saying I'm not gay over and over to multiple times a day, among a peer group, to think of yourself that way and to formulate the concept, because the concept of manhood, the concept of the ideal manhood that we are all performing for each other in our society, for that to create a very rigid boundary where we are constantly affirming our cis heteronormativity, constantly affirming our straightness, um, it's actually affecting psychology in a way that we need to be mindful of. I'll tell you what, there's another way we could if we wanted to, if we, you know, inflicted the same kind of weird social strictures. We could build the concept of masculinity with contrast against being violent. We could say no sexual violence, no sexual assault. Even the no Diddy thing. The no Diddy thing emerges, right? Young boys all over the country are saying no Diddy now, instead of, when I was growing up, it was pause. And again, here it is. It's what they're talking about is no Diddy, no homosexuality. No. That's we're externalizing that frequently. We are confirming that this in group that we have is straight. That's what we are. And I'm telling you that just as easily, no Diddy could mean no sexual assault. And we could be building our communities and our brotherhoods, our fraternities, our masculine sense, our personal sense of masculinity, the enforcement of each other's position as in-group masculine who we support. We could enforce kindness. We could enforce a commitment to consent in a sexual space. We could enforce a real disgust, the same kind of disgust, the externalization of non-heteronormative sexual impulses and sexual desires and sexual energy. We could enforce a disgust for sexual assault and for violence and for abuse of power. That's also available to us. And in the same way, a lot of teens and older men are very well attuned with their straightness because of this constant enforcement that I'm talking about, because of the language of no homo and the kind of like the cultural norm around doing that, both in our private lives and with our friends, but also on television, on the radio. All these popular people do it, even in a playful energy. Ha 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 ha, no homo, no homo. Everyone knows that that's of importance, right? And of course, we're also talking about, people being out of the closet and being free to be gay is also majorly on the rise, I think, and for good reason, because people are being who they are and they should be free to be that. So we have this liberalization in some senses, but we also have, among like a strong contingent of men who are masculine, this real desire to perform heteronormativity. And unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't come with these other things that I'm talking about. There's no enforcement for kindness and the expectation of it and the mockery of the unkind. It's just, that's right there. It's available to us. This plays right into the language stuff again. This plays right into what I'm talking about in terms of physics. I'm saying that on a chemical, cellular, on a root biological level, on a psychological level, I've been in groups where men will reflexively reject, like, even things that could vaguely imply homosexuality. And this could be applied in the same kind of reflexive, no, we don't do that here, could be applied in so many other ways. And it could show up in the same kind of reflexive, like, understanding, where it's just common. It's not even, in fact, what would be uncommon would be to be unkind. It's just, it's right there. It's applause for that. I think there's I'm trying to point to, again, the power of words, and really uh the power of definitions, the power of underlying assumptions underneath um the words we say, and the normalization of the words we say. You know, I brought this up a few times. A friend of mine, like I said, a couple years ago, talking something about something a similar topic like this. I was not a couple years, a couple months ago. I'm dismayed by the quiet of a lot of men on major political issues of global significance. Um, and I think it has a lot to do with the self definition. I think it has a lot to do with the self definition, the definition of self, the definition of what it means to be here on this planet, um, and what it means to have, the good life. What does the good life mean? What is a reasonable risk? Um, the concept of the entrepreneur is such a big and pervasive thing at this point. And that supersedes, again, all these other things. People want to be an entrepreneur. They want to be certain things. We can also want to be kind and decent. Um, it's just a matter of it's just a matter of bringing ourselves to that, asserting that as an archetype. The archetype isn't just the robber baron and the entrepreneur and the athlete and the player, or the all these social archetypes. The archetype in all these cases includes a kindness and a commitment to honoring and respecting, our shared human condition. To me, that's like a root thing. I honestly don't care about a great deal more than that if that's not in place. If that condition of concern for the fellow person isn't there, then I can't be impressed with a title or a bunch of collection of money or some other kind of skill you have, let's say. Um, we need that foundational language and that foundational cultural sharing. And when I say cultural, I mean cross cultural, I mean international, I mean cross boundaries, cross national boundaries, cross ethnicities, cross faiths. Understanding, again, that these are all human, social, political separations. They aren't root. They aren't root. So what I'm seeing, again, I've talked a lot about men in this episode, but it's all over the place. It's not. This has a gender component. This is part of the race question. This has to do with nationalism and fascism. Um, all of the isms, all of the harmful isms, have at their root the same challenge, which is to connect which is to recognize that whatever inside and outside group that they've contrived, that those aren't real in the real sense. Like they're real partly and largely. A lot of these things are real because of the story we tell about them. I posted the other day on Facebook. Let me see if I can find it. It's an image of an egg, a woman's egg being fertilized. Hope I don't scroll past it here. But the point was this. I grew up on the story that when a human is conceived, the process is this. The egg sits there, the egg implants itself in the wall, and it just sits there passively, waiting to be penetrated by a sperm. And the story goes that the male, the man, contributes millions of sperm that shoot out and engage in this incredible race. Here it is. I found it. Oh yeah. We're gonna end it. We're gonna end this episode with a little analysis on this, because it all ties into words again, guys. I was raised with the sense that the egg sits passively, the sperm all shoot out, and they engage in this massive battle, and they race, and the weak ones die because of these chemicals in the vagina, and this blah blah blah, and then the other ones, the flagellum, the other ones got weird deformities. They had two flagellum and they couldn't swim as fast, and they weren't aerodynamic or water dynamic, and the strongest, fittest sperm gets it to the egg, and boom, and that egg goes, oh, thank you, you strongest, fittest sperm, for getting here and impregnate or implanting yourself and conceiving with me. But here's a different story. Here's what it says here. I'll read this. Human reproduction is commonly portrayed as a gigantic marathon swimming event in which the fastest, fittest sperm wins the race and prize of fertilizing the egg. Yet another male-dominated fantasy about the creation of life. The notion that human sperm, once ejaculated, begin a frantic race to reach the egg has completely overshadowed the real story of reproduction. A 2020 study revealed that, in fact, there is a communication system between the egg and the sperm. The egg has the ability to repel certain sperm with a molecular mechanism, causing them to swim slower, and also attract certain sperm by releasing a chemoattractant, helping them move faster. Cervical mucus, called L mucus, helps filter out any low-quality sperm. Bye, boy. In the study, Fitzpatrick is quoted. Follicular fluid from one female was better at attracting sperm from one male, while follicular fluid from another female was better at attracting sperm from a different male. This shows that interactions between human eggs and sperm depend on the specific identity of the woman and the men involved. Once she makes her choice, this is in all caps, all caps here. Once she makes her choice and the sperm begins to penetrate the egg then releases a chemical response that causes all the other sperm's heads to pop off. Yep, mass decapitation. And to keep things in perspective, the male sperm is the smallest cell in the human body, while the female egg is the largest. All right. So I posted this, and I posted it with this little caption. I'll read my caption. But if the storyteller prefers a story about strongest male sperm battling to win the race for a passive, uninvolved egg, then they tell that story. It passes as true enough, I guess. Applause for that. But it's not reality. It's not nature. That story is just a collection of words. It's a metaphor for something more complex, but they hold that blurry map in their heads. And the reason I'm talking this way, let's be clear. The old story of the passive, uninvolved egg and the battling sperm was a fantasy. It was a story told, not only was it sort of good enough, it wasn't detailed and accurate, it was good enough, but it was used then by unaware simpletons who took that little map and then started to extrapolate other stories about human behavior from that. The idea of women's passivity and submissive nature is partly bolstered by the story of the passive egg. The passive egg tells women that they should be passive. I've heard men make this case, and the same with the sperm. We, as each of us sitting here, we are the sperm that won. We were the best sperm. This fucking sperm was out here busting ass, and made it. That's the one. And of course, there's some elements to that, and there's things going on. But the idea that there's a communication and a complexity to this that involves an active sperm, an active feminine reproductive cell performing, that sounds great. That sounds more like what reality. That sounds more. I mean, based on what I understand of like, it's all one thing, and that everything is a collaborative everything. But I saw this posted somewhere else, and this one guy in particular was pissed, and he was like, "Oh, if you hate men, just say you hate men. You don't have to create all this stuff." I don't even understand, like this right here, the use of the she in all caps. This is a piece of editorial work by, I think, the poster, right? Zan, right? I'm sure the article doesn't, but it's valuable to highlight once she makes her choice, once the egg makes a choice, these other things happen, that she's able to mass decapitate the other sperm. And I'm sure even this is a story. It is an incomplete story, but the addition of the female reproductive organ's active role in this, instead of being a passive participant, really blows everything out of the water. And it is the story. The story, like, there are right-wing websites that are making this metaphor and making this case for why women should do this based on this metaphor and other metaphors, other incomplete stories and other incomplete interpretations, other loose political use of words. They don't even identify it that way. They like to pretend that they're involved in something called journalism, or if they're in this, they're science. Oh, this is science. It's natural. Men do this and women do it. And they're wrong. And they're just wrong. Anything that you would say, anything you come up is a story. And any extrapolation of like further like predictions and requirements of the human condition from this would be a story and would be a bad story. And so y'all are just wrong. But it was truth. It's in textbooks. It's certainly in like children's, any textbook that was like very simplified kids' stories tell that story about the sperm race. And then even if you go into more serious committed biology books, that sperm race was the norm conception. And I think that the human social condition, I can't speak for other textbooks in other parts of the world or whatever. I think as an American, without a doubt, our evolutionary understanding of how powerful people are making arguments and seeing the world in certain ways and trying to set norms based on incomplete, vague, false, inaccurate maps and words. And it's only when we have a real close-up look from love with the principle of acceptance, constantly accepting new information, expanding our understanding of what is, and accepting and not projecting, not looking with a goal at the end. Note the quantum, this is I see a loose thread here with like some of the quantum physics discourse, that the perceiver is integral in what actually ends up being manifested, what actually is in the story that they will say. Not only what they perceive, but go further, the story that they will tell about what they perceive, the internalization of what they perceive. If you ask them to write it down very quickly, what do they perceive? They will perceive what they are looking for. and what stories. And that's why we have to be on top of our stories, and we have to be on top of history. We have to be on top of journalism. Journalism is just history in the shorter term, in the present. We cannot allow assholes and unserious people to commandeer our history and our journalism. And we can take control of our words, and we must, and we will, and we are. And I love it. Applause for that. Sheba says, LOL, if men could do it, we would never hear the end of it. If men could like decapitate the sperm or something, it's whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when men get together and are telling themselves a flattering story. I think women could also be susceptible to that too. I think that's kind of something that happens. But yeah, we see men doing it because men have had the lion's share of access to the microphones and to the written word and to the capacity to produce content, old content and present content. But it's changing and lots of stuff is happening at the same time, y'all. And look, I'm gonna wrap it up. Yo, that's the episode. Thanks a lot, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get the music started. Remember, yo, you see what you're looking for. Words are really important. I think words are a part of physics. And that's wild, but it also means that you have control, yo. That's actually like a controller. Think about that, yo. It's all one
Last
thing.
things first, you already win. You already him. You don't gotta
Peace.
pretend. Fuck them. You already king. You stay real. You confident in your skin. It's all now. Sit in the power that you already in. This the story of a master from a true Bedouin, far away from home than few ever been. First round pick, league of the smooth gentlemen. The game rigged like 50 said it's a cruel sentiment. I'm from the era when lyrics and bars is over everything. 5-star veteran. You couldn't walk in my fucking shoes or carry them. Excuse my borderline is very thin. Married to the game like ever since maybe 2010. I realized most of y'all not serious. Point blank period. I flex and twist necks like cherry stems. Thought he was buried, but there he is, a new narrative.